enormous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
What's up, everyone? This is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. I don't know if Ian's going to be on tonight. He's not responding, so I hope he's all right. But even if, he might jump on. So there he is. Hey, speak of the devil. Here we go. Hold on a second. Let me position this 1 second. There we go. All right.
Yeah, it's like Beetlejuice. Yeah,
perfect time.
He died at the worst time, so my bad.
You're right. Position your camera. There you go. Tilt it up a little more. There you go.
All right.
That's good. Perfect. All right. So this is Hater Radio. My name is Chris McLean. Ian Gibson, the co-host. So we're going to jump into it. The Week 10 recap. Just first shout out to the Dodgers after a huge victory, what seemed like an impossibility in that Game 7, because that was crazy. I mean, my wife was like about to stroke out just like watching that game. It was, she's a born and bred LA Dodger fan, and she was just living and breathing with these last couple of games, and last night was just unreal. I happened to be downtown while the game was going on, so I was like, soon as they won, I was like, yeah, I need to get out of here because I don't know what's going to happen. So we left.
I saw downtown when the Lightning won, and yeah, you got to get out of Dodge because you're not going to have a lot of moving room. There was a post I saw. I almost sent it to you because obviously Dodgers. Yeah. It was a picture of the Blue Jays, and it went through the innings, and it had the logo slowly morph from the Blue Jays to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yes.
So that was – I give sympathy to the Jays because that is – man, I mean, speaking as a Rays fan, even for me, that was brutal. Like 2 outs away, that's rough. But
it was one strike and 1 out away. That was how close they got. And it's like, I honestly, if the Rays ever get that close and they lose, I don't know what I'm going to do. That is just heartbreaking.
I came pretty close when they lost to Boston in 2021 because
that was brutal.
You hit the grand slam, went up 5-1, and then they blew it, and then we lost every game after that. That was probably the worst, and that's just saying something as a Rays fan. That was probably the toughest loss I've gone through as a Rays fan.
Yeah. I mean, the Lightning, when they were like, the President's Trophy and then lost to Columbus, that was brutal because it was like, it looked like the Lightning were going to just run to the cup and they just got swept immediately. No, go ahead.
For me, same thing, because you know how I am with the Lightning in hockey. That was the worst loss in series. Usually after the Lightning are eliminated, I still will watch the playoffs. That was the only time I was like, I can't even watch hockey right now. I was so disgusted. That was the worst loss until 2 goals in a minute 12 to the Florida Panthers. And my wife can tell you this. I legit had to take a walk outside.
What year was that? Which one?
Last year. When we lost last year, and then we went down 3-1. And I was like, well, that's the series because we're not coming back from 3-1. My wife could tell you, I was sitting in bed. We gave up that goal, and they took the lead and won. I legit was like, hun, I need to take a walk. Like, I am so mad right now.
I just, with like hockey the last couple of years, because like the Panthers have been so good, so it's been frustrating. But it's like the Lightning have been, if they can beat the Panthers and, they have a chance of going on, but it's like they keep having to play the Panthers in the first round. I mean, I think they've played them like 3 out of the last 4 years.
The last 4, 2021, 2022, 2024, and 2025. So, yeah, 3 out of 4 years.
Yeah, so it's just, like it's one of us can make it, and it's like, there's nothing you can do. It's like you just have to play each other. I just wish they would change the playoff format so that those two could play in Eastern Conference Finals, because that would be like more of a heavier, weightier like playoff game. But
yeah,
let's get into college football because that's what this show is all about. Sorry, we're off topic, but we talk about all sports if we can, just a little bit here. But Week 10, a lot of really good games. A a lot of big games, a lot of coach firings. You know, Auburn fires Hugh Freeze. It looks like Mike Norvell at Florida State is safe for another week after they get that blowout, and then Maryland fires their coach, and then you've got potentially South Carolina going to fire Shane Beamer. You've got, I saw reports even of Josh Heupel getting a situation, and I'm just like, I had tweeted out earlier, there is a chance if like all the coaches that are going to get hired in the SEC, and if you take some that go from other schools to another, so that would include, if in totality, it'll be around 10 job openings in the SEC, 10 new coaches next year at schools. Yeah. That is more than, that's like 2/3 of the teams. That is crazy to me that would even be a possibility, but it really seems likely with all of the firings that are going to go on and the hirings. And the one thing that I pointed out the most, it seems the problem with all of these openings is not everyone's going to get a good coach. Like, there are not that many good candidates around right now. There are not like the hot offensive coordinator that like can go from, you know, wherever. I think honestly, some of the ones that might be like sneakier good hires might be that guy Eric Morris from like North Texas. Yeah. Like, he obviously runs a really good offensive scheme, and you know he could go to like Arkansas or Auburn and do quite well. I don't know if Auburn's going to want to go after another G5 coach, but I don't know if their program is like up to that prestige to really go get a big time coach. I mean, they got Brian Harsin and Hugh Freeze in the last 5 years, and you know they did nothing, and now it's like, who are they going to get? I don't know. I mean, some Auburn fans like to think that they're a prestige coaching position, but I don't think so. I'm not in agreement. What are your thoughts on some of this coaching hiring stuff?
There was a really good article out on The Athletic, and I recommend anybody to go on The Athletic. They have some amazing articles out there. Matt Baker, actually from the Tampa Bay Times, I interviewed him at USF. Fantastic writer. Big shout out to him. But they had, I don't know if he was a part of it. They had an article, and it's true. This is going to be one of the most wild cycles because there aren't enough coaches to fill, at least coaches that people think they want to fill out the jobs that are now going to be available. Because you got Florida, LSU, Penn State, Maryland, Auburn, just off the top of my head. And then there's the possibility of Florida State opening up. There's a lot of other, you know, knives over the heads of these coaches. And there's a possibility of Sarkisian leaving for the NFL. So Texas might come open. It's going to be SC. Yeah, there's UCLA. There's a lot of jobs. There's going to be a lot of jobs that are going to be open that will not be getting the home run hire.
Yeah.
So read the article, because we're living in a time where the expectations are second to none, despite the coaches that, you know, are getting hired. I feel like, the thing is too, especially with the dynamics now of college football, is that you're seeing teams like, best case example is Indiana and Vandy. They were in the top. Obviously, Vanderbilt lost, but Indiana might be the number one team going into the playoff if the committee picks it. And Vandy was in the top 10. And their only losses are Alabama and Texas.
Yeah.
So team prestige, they talked about it, may not be as big of a deal, because if you can win in Indiana, it doesn't really matter anymore. And if you want the best case example, look at Brian Kelly. He left Notre Dame to go to LSU for the specific reason he said of himself, to win a national championship. And in that time, Notre Dame went to a national championship and LSU got nowhere close. So this is going to be a time where I think athletic facilities, how much the ADs are involved and how much the boosters and, you know, fan base is involved, everything needs to be at the highest level in order to help with NIL and recruiting, instead of banking on the, you know, idea of this is a prestigious school. They have a history of winning championships. I still think that plays a factor, but I don't think it nearly is as big as it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like LSU, the last 3 years they were like 9-4, 10-4, or 10-3, and then this year they were like 5-3, I think, at this point. And so like they struggled, and they like, you know, they have the facilities, they have the in-state recruiting, they don't really have anyone else in the state that's going to bother them as far as getting these big time recruits, so they can land top talent. And they do have 3 national championships the last couple of years. But then, you know, I don't know. You've got the meddling with the governor. You've got firings of their athletic director, who hired like, I think it was like 6 national champions the last like 5 years of different sports, that he hired those coaches. And then, you know, they don't have a president there. So like LSU right now, like I think before the governor started really meddling and the AD got fired, I think that job looked probably better. But I think with those aspects, I think the best coach is like, yeah, I'm not gonna go and deal with that, because that's just some like ridiculousness that I don't want to deal with, because I already have, you know, big time college football that I have to coach. I don't want to have to deal with a governor who's upset with certain things going on with our program. And so I don't think LSU is the top job that LSU fans and some of the media like to project it as. I think right now Florida is probably the top job, and simply because of the roster. Like Florida's roster is top tier. Like they were toe to toe with Georgia, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. But you know, if they can get a good offensive mind at Florida, they're going to score 35 points a game at least, and their defense is good enough to hold teams to like 25 and under. And so this team is poised. There is a lot of talent on that roster. They just need the right coach to come in and take it over, which I think is going to happen. I mean, it seems likely that they're going to get a good coach, and it's an attractive job. Like the facilities are upgraded. The NIL is, in simpatico with everything else with the program. And I feel like it's right there. It just honestly, as much as Billy Napier was bad in a lot of things, he was really good at building this team. And the program is just, it's like, it just needs that extra bit of seasoning, and they're going to really, take off. So with that being said, let's jump into the Week 10 games. First game we have is Tulane UTSA. Yeah, I know. I didn't even keep track of it because I was watching the baseball game, and I wish I would have been able to, because I would have sat down and watched the whole game, because USF's playing UTSA next week. And but I watched the recap, and man, Tulane just did not look good. Retzlaff, 2 interceptions. They were like making some plays, but there was like a field goal they missed from like 5 feet out. Like, there was all kinds of mistakes going on for Tulane, and UTSA just put it on them. They were just scoring at will. They were running, fake plays. They were running trick, wide receiver throws. Tulane did some of that too and got a nice touchdown off one as well. But, UTSA was just the better team. Henry for UTSA had a really good game. McCown, the quarterback, 370 yards, 4 TDs. Amador had 113 receiving and 2 TDs. And then I believe he had a TD passing. And so that's a big day for him. It wasn't even close. Like, this game was a blowout. UTSA gets that late touchdown to make it even worse. And it was just like, Tulane, it sucks because it's like they had a lot going on for them. If they could just win out, they were more than likely going to the American Championship game, with only the one loss at the time was to Ole Miss. So, like, they were perfect in American play. Now everything is open for USF. Like, literally, it opens the door for them. And, Tulane the rest of the year has a pretty easy schedule outside of Memphis. So they have to play Memphis next week, and that's really going to be the game of the week, like outside of the USF UTSA game. And those two games are right in a row. So we'll get that UTSA game on Thursday, and then Friday is the Tulane Memphis game. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know what's going to happen in that Memphis game because Memphis obviously riding high after that win against USF. Can Tulane recover from that loss? I don't know. It's going to be hard. It's in Memphis. I'll wait and see, and we'll talk about that game on Wednesday. But Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah, this game, it was very surprising because Tulane was the one we weren't really too concerned about. We're settling into Tulane being like the 1 seed or the 2 seed. More than likely they were going to host, especially after the chaos with Memphis and then USF and North Texas. It was either like Navy, Tulane. Those are the ones we were kind of certain on. But Tulane just getting absolutely boat raced against UTSA was not on the bingo card. Yeah. I expected UTSA to play them close. And honestly, that first drive Tulane had, they looked good. They had a really long sustained drive, but then they gave up 31 unanswered, and the secondary just could not stop the air attack. It was very, very surprising because I expected Tulane to, play better against the pass than they did, and they just got carved up. And, yeah, UTSA runs away with it. And then obviously we'll get into Navy, North Texas, but the American Conference is just now totally wide open for everybody now because everybody's beaten everybody, and everybody has now one loss. So nobody's safe, and now anybody could legit jump into the conference title picture.
Yeah, I mean, it's wide open. Let's move on to Penn State, Ohio State. It's a real shame because this game could have been a huge game. At the beginning of the year, we all thought, Penn State was like 2 or 3 in the beginning of the year, and Ohio State was number 1 or number 2. So, we're like, it'll be a close game once we get to it. It'll be, they'll both be probably undefeated, and it'll be basically a playoff eliminator, or maybe like a Big Ten championship game eliminator. And no, Penn State has fired their coach. Drew Allar is out for the year. They have no shot at anything now. And their quarterback just, I don't know. I mean, he's just an average quarterback. And Ohio State really dominated this game. This game was never close. Second half started, and Ohio State just puts it on them, 2 straight touchdowns, and they never looked back. And Penn State didn't do anything in the second half. They got shut out. Julian Sayin had a huge game. Nick Singleton had some plays in that first half and kept them in it. But outside of that fumble that gave Penn State a short field and they scored shortly thereafter, that was it. Like, the game really was like Ohio State controlled the entire game. And Julian Sayin looks pretty good. He was 20 of 23. Like, it's interesting now with this Heisman stuff because we haven't really talked about it a ton. We used to do like Heisman rankings like every week, and we've kind of gone away from that. I'm kind of glad because I don't know. It's whatever. Like, ranking the Heisman, like, it's hard to say who's better, but like right now looking at it, it's wide open. And so really, you could say Julian Sayin, you could say Mendoza, you could say Ty Simpson, you could say Marcel Reed. Like, any one of those guys could be, in New York, and they probably will be at this point. It would have to be like something huge to really prevent either of them going. But your thoughts in this game, Ian?
Going into that halftime, I was legit thinking maybe Penn State took some of the voodoo that was hexed on them and was giving it back to Ohio State. Because, Ohio State was the better team, but it was still a 3-point game. And I'm thinking maybe they have a shot in this. But then, credit to Ohio State, they killed any hope they had going forward. It was just complete domination through the second half. They, did not, obviously shut them out in the second half. And Penn State, after, they didn't give them the short field that they had in those scoring drives, and that was key. and they just had these once the same drives. Sane had a great game. The wide receivers of Jackson and Smith had an amazing game too. So it was
Cardell Tate.
Yeah, Cardell Tate obviously were, it was an all-around great offensive performance, and there was nothing that, they could do. I will say, I mean, obviously for Penn State, having the defensive coordinator from Ohio State, I don't know why you're playing man-on-man against the best wide receivers in the country, but that was a decision because they were just getting burned left and right, and it was just, child's play for Sand. But great win for Ohio State. Didn't let any chance of an upset. And now for Penn State, I'm not kidding. There is a legit chance because they play Indiana next game, and then they got to play Michigan State. Both of them are winless in Big Ten play. Those are both Michigan State and Penn State when they play each other. That might be their best chance to get a win in the Big Ten. So that game is going to be, an epic for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State, they're going to get blown out by Indiana next week. Then they have Michigan State, Nebraska, and Rutgers. They have a shot against Michigan State and Rutgers. They might go in a losing season. Yeah. They went from literally the semifinals last year to a losing season. It's wild what college football has become. It's like literally you can be on the doorstep or a cellar dweller in the matter of like 9-10 months. It really is ridiculous. Okay, moving on to Vanderbilt, Texas. This game looked a lot closer from the final score, 34-31. And like credit to Vanderbilt, they didn't stop playing, and Pavia put up huge numbers. But it was largely because they had to play catch up at the end. And like Texas had a shot. They the wide receiver dropped the ball, but like if he caught the ball on that like late touchdown throw or potential touchdown throw, the game would have been like 41-16. Yeah. And like Vandy probably lays over at that point. But he drops it, Vandy gets the ball back, and they just kept throwing the ball, and they kept in the game because at one point Texas was just like straight dominating. They were up what was it? They were up 34-10 at one point. And then Vanderbilt scored in the fourth quarter, and it was like hanging around. They were just hanging around. I mean, it resulted in an onside kick at the end where Vanderbilt almost got it. Like it was like that close, and Texas had to squeak it out. But like, it's one of those things where it's like when you're up a bunch of scores and you're just kind of playing prevent defense. I know that's like these defensive coordinators love doing that, but man, it's like if you got through this so much of the game, just continue to play your base defense, what got you there. Don't get out of it. There's this like desire just to play off of people. I mean, you saw it. Like there were guys wide open, and it's like, what are you doing, man? Just play some kind of defense here. Force them to go the length of the field. The one score was like, it was like a 70-yard touchdown. And it's just like, man, you can't allow scores like that. I don't know. It's just kind of ridiculous. But this Texas team is 7-2, and they have the one loss to Ohio State, so they're only a one-loss SEC team at this point. They come into the SEC right there in the mix, and we'll talk about it on Wednesday, their game against Georgia. But you've got at the top of the heap, you've got Texas A&M undefeated, Alabama one loss, Ole Miss one loss, Georgia one loss. Texas plays two of them. So if Texas can beat out Georgia and Texas A&M, I mean, anything is possible, and they can get to the playoff. Like if they get to the SEC championship game, I think they're guaranteed a spot in the playoff. That seems to be the MO for these CFP committee people. They're like, oh, if you make the playoff or make the championship game, then you should get into the playoff. I don't know. It's weird. They don't think the game of a loss in the championship game hurts them that much, which makes sense because it's a good opponent. But it's just like at the same time, it basically like locks them into picking these teams. I don't know. We'll see. Texas, a lot to play for the rest of the year. Like I said, they got Georgia. Arkansas should be an easy one, then Texas A&M. But your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and Texas was just running away with this game, and Vandy just could not keep up, especially that first half. That defense was clamping down. But I agree, too. That, like, fourth quarter was just like, dude, what are you doing? Like, I'm not, like I always say, prevent defense prevents you from winning, and it was almost the case because Vanderbilt's not going to lay down and die. That's not been their MO for the past 3 years.
Yeah.
So they had, they were playing the secondaries deep, and Pavia would either run or, hit him on a deep out route. But the thing was, too, on why I think Vandy lost this game is that they've always had the run game to complement, either it be from, Pavia, Alexander, or something like that. Texas made it a mission that, like, we know Pavia is good, but he's going to be the only reason he beats us. We're not giving them any other chance because Pavia had a fantastic game, almost 400 yards passing, but the rushing attack was like 55 yards or something like that. It became very predictable. And it only worked when Texas was playing back, to be honest. Once Texas, the secondary, was playing back, that's when Vandy was starting to get those lanes open. So that was more on Texas than I think Vanderbilt, but credit to Vanderbilt. They were, fighting and in it. And Texas's season, it's not dead. This is a huge win for them. Again, and saying that we're saying beating Vandy is huge. But for Vanderbilt, too, I mean, the rest of their schedule, like you said, they play Auburn, and, they're dead in the water. Then they play Kentucky, and then that Tennessee matchup, which Tennessee has looked vulnerable at times.
Yeah.
They're not. Obviously, we've got to see what happens. I mean, it's been a chaotic year. But I wouldn't count them out of the playoff just yet because when your two losses are Bama and Texas, if those are their only losses, there is a legit case that they could sneak into the playoff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it again, right now, and this is the beauty of a 12-team playoff, is the fact that things are so wide open, and it makes it for an enjoyable time because everyone has a chance. Like, we're even talking about USF with a chance to get into the playoff, and they have 2 losses, an American team. When was that even like a thought the last like 15 years? Like, if a team in a group of 5, they never had a shot after, like, you maybe had 1 loss, maybe. And it was more than likely you had to go undefeated. And now they could have 2 losses and they have a real shot at potentially getting in the playoff. That's just amazing to me. I love that they expanded. I don't know if they should expand anymore. I think there's still hasn't been 100% that they're going to, but like it's more than likely. But it just opens it up to more teams. The fact that we have more teams that have more possibility of getting into the tournament and having a chance of winning just like makes everyone else like, oh, I have to have a shot. Like it clues you in. You're like, you're more tuned into it. Like, years ago it would be like if you had a 7-3 team with like 2 weeks to go, you tuned out. It's like, oh, that's it. But now it's like if you have a good enough team and you're 7-3, those last 2 games are going to be crucial, and you're going to tune into the very end. And like it helps with ratings, it helps with everyone being involved. Like it's just all around. The fact that they expanded the playoffs was a good thing. I don't know. People love to like reminisce about old times with the BCS and like other things and romanticize things and like, oh, it was so great back then. I'm sorry, it wasn't. There were literally only like 4 teams that had a shot. Now you open it up to like 20 teams every year. The top 25 is basically a viable spot to get into the playoff. That is, you cannot ask for any more. That is such a like tremendous thing. I love that is a reality. Okay, let's move on to, I'll let you do this one. Miami, SMU.
All right, so I know I picked Miami, but don't act like nobody was surprised. Like, come on. Like, of course this happens. As soon as that calendar hits November, and there was a stat that they showed on ESPN after the game. Over the last 10 years, Miami, at some point going into November, was in the top 10, and they failed to make the playoff. And there was a very good chance now they're done. because the only chance they had left was to maybe get into the ACC championship. And with this loss, it's all but over because now you have 2 losses in the ACC now. Meanwhile, everybody else in front of them is, I think, Virginia, Georgia Tech lost, but Virginia, Georgia Tech, and I think Louisville has an edge on them. They only have 1 conference loss. Pitt has only 1 conference loss.
Yeah.
And
they play Pitt at the end of the year in Pitt, like end of November. So like that's going to be a cold game. And that quarterback is like tearing people up right now.
Yeah. But Miami, again, it was just the thing that set it off was the overtime period. This is where you have to buckle down. You have to win the game. I don't care what has happened, controversial call with late hit on Jennings or whatever you want to call it. You've got to lock in. And after Beck threw that interception, the defense quit. I don't care what anybody says. They had no running game. SMU had no running game for 4 quarters. And then all of a sudden, it was the Pony Express all over again in the 80s. Just ran right through Miami, scored the game-winning touchdown. And what do you know? A bunch of people in blue are rushing the field. But again, it's not surprising because Miami has been losing these games that they are the better team in for the past, 10 years.
Yeah.
And it again, it's not just like a coaching. I mean, it is on Cristobal, but I just don't know how you don't coach your team up to be like, look, guys, these teams are going to throw everything they have at you. Be ready. And they just didn't. It looked like they didn't care. And it was kind of similar how I thought about Florida at the end of 2 years ago. It was like they were just mailing it in, and especially in that overtime period, once Beck threw that interception, it looked like you could see the defeat in their eyes. So for Miami, again, I mean, at what point do you wonder where you're going as a program? Because you still have failed to win an ACC championship. You've only made it to 1 and got blown out by Clemson. And you looked like you were number 2 in the country a few weeks ago. So what are we doing once the clock hits November and the games get tougher and you have to win out? They just fold. I'm not surprised, but I failed to see like a reason for why they keep doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to pour dirt on their grave, but Cristobal, when he was at Oregon, the only year that he had really good success was the year that they had a short season in 2020 because of COVID. And so they got to the Pac-12 championship and won it, but they only won like 5 games that year. So okay, they won some miraculously half season to have some kind of thing like this. The rest of the time he choked away games, and he had Justin Herbert, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now, and he didn't do anything with him. And then he had a number 1 pick with Cam Ward and lost 2 games. I don't know, man. It's like in this game specifically, I never thought their secondary was that great. I think they hadn't been really attacked by a seasoned quarterback yet. I mean, the USF Byron Brown was about the only other one that was an experienced quarterback. DJ Lagway at that point had only started 7 games. CJ Carr was his first start. The other one was Miller Moss, which an experienced quarterback, and they got smoked. I think anytime that they had gone up against a good offense, they were going to struggle, and they did that so far this year. And I don't know, they were putting their hat on their defense. Their defense is so good. I didn't think so. Outside of their D-line, which Bain and the other guys on the D-line are good. I will granted you, they're a good D-line. But the rest of the defense is not that good. Their linebackers are kind of okay, and their secondary is not that good. And so, they got smoked in this game. Jennings had 356 yards or 365 yards passing. They threw the ball all over them. They couldn't run the ball, and credit to the D-line. They were able to make the stops when they could and force them into being a throwing team. But I don't know, man. It's 2 years in a row like this, and I'm seeing a lot of Miami fans wanting him gone, and I don't blame them because if you have this amount of talent that they have recruited well,
Yep.
and they've been like top 15 the last like 3-4 years in recruiting, you should have results. You should be up there with some of the best teams in the country. And if you're losing games like, last year to Georgia Tech, that was like a 7-6 team, lost to Syracuse, now losing to Louisville, SMU, who was 5-3 coming into this game. I mean, it's not a good look. The rest of the year, they don't have much to play for. Like I saw like a probability chart of the teams and their chances of going to the playoff, and they weren't even on that list out of like 20 teams. So like they're not even listed now. So they basically have no shot, and they would have to have some miracle happen. And again, like we just talked about, they play Pitt later in this month, and that's going to be a cold weather game. They're probably going to struggle on offense, and then Pitt is going to do well with their offense because their quarterback is lighting it up right now. And he's not an experienced quarterback, but he seems to be the difference maker with Pitt right now. So I don't know. This team is destined for at least 3 losses. They go to a bowl game, they'll probably lose that as well because they seemingly don't care about bowl games ever at that school. And they're 9-4, and like their expectation was the playoff, and they go 9-4. Like, I don't know, man. I can't say any better because Florida has lost the last couple of years. I mean, Florida was 8-5 last year. That's not that far away from 9-4. But then again, Billy Napier got fired this year, so
at least we fill our stadium. That's all I'm going to say.
What?
At least we fill our stadium. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, definitely. It doesn't matter who the opponent is; they're going to fill the stadium. Miami, and I don't care. Like if they're bad, I'm not upset. It kind of makes me happy that they're not good. But at the same time, I do like to compete with them, and I would like Florida to be better. And if Miami's better and we're both teams are better, then it's more enjoyable to watch both of them play competitive games. They're not on each other's schedule for the near future, so who knows the next time they play, bowl game or potentially a playoff spot. But either way, something needs to be done with Cristobal, and it's not a good look for them. Not a good look to lose to these teams like this when they should be winning these games. But we knew it was going to be a potential, a sore spot for them. I knew, and I tried to do the reverse jinx, and I said they were going to win, and I'm glad they lost, and it worked. So, I'll probably have them win against Pitt too, and hopefully they lose that one too. All right, so next game we got, speaking of the American Conference, North Texas going up against Navy. North Texas wins 31-17. North Texas was up 24-17 late in this game, and they got a touchdown in the third quarter, and then they had the ball, I think, close at the end as well, and they could have got another touchdown because Caleb Hawkins went off. He had 197 yards, 4 TDs. He was just doing things on this defense like no other, and Mestemaker had a decent game, but he really wasn't the difference in this game. It was the run game for North Texas and Navy's inability to stop them. But I will say Navy was able to run the ball extremely well and had a lot of explosive plays in the run game. They just really couldn't get a lot of touchdowns. They were good on conversions, 7 of 11 on conversions. But, this North Texas team is good. I mean, outside of that USF loss, they've pretty much manhandled everyone they've played. Their schedule for the next couple of weeks, because they're already at nine games, so they only have 3 left. They have a really good shot of getting to the American Conference Championship. They've got UAB, Rice, Temple. Their head-to-head with USF is USF's got the head-to-head, so even though they would tie, USF would host the game if they both end up with 1 loss. So it looks more than likely at this point North Texas is going to fill that spot. So it's really up to USF and what happens with Memphis as well, because Memphis, they only have the one loss to UAB. So I think USF really needs to be a cheerleader for Tulane next week. But I don't know. I don't know the like tiebreaker scenarios. If it's Memphis with one loss and North Texas with one loss, and then USF with one loss, I don't know who gets to go. I mean, USF lost to Memphis, but they beat North Texas, and then North Texas lost to USF, and they didn't play Memphis. So I don't know who wins in that tiebreaker. Maybe it's USF because they have like a better ranking potentially. I don't know. Have you heard anything about tiebreaker scenarios on that?
Not yet. I would have to do some homework and math, and I just haven't had the time. But I know going into this game, I remember I texted George. I know I picked in North Texas, but this week I was like, holy crap, this is chaos conference right now, because everybody now has one loss. Everybody needs to win out, and somebody's going to be left out in the cold. And I remember saying, I was like, now Destiny's kind of in USF's hands, because if they went out, beat Navy, beat UTSA, by tiebreaker rules, if Memphis they went out, it would be them because they have the tiebreaker on North Texas, and then they would have the tiebreaker on Navy. So USF just needs to win out now, and they're back in the conference championship. But when this game, to the game itself, that was North Texas's best game of the year, like bar none. I don't know, probably the USF game was the biggest, but this was their best. And forcing those 3 turnovers were critical into that win, because Navy was not going down without a fight. Yeah. And Navy was trying to play keep away. They won the time of possession game, but they could not stop the run. And that is something that was huge. They did a good job containing, Messamaker the best they could. I mean, obviously he still had over 200 yards passing, but having almost over 200 yards rushing, it's hard to win when you're giving up that much, on the ground. So North Texas gets their biggest win. They're still in the hunt for the, conference championship, as is now everybody. Last time I checked, East Carolina could technically make it in too. So, really, if you going in October, we were like, okay, it's kind of clear USF, North Texas, Navy, and Tulane. Now, there's just a nuclear explosion, and it's everybody can hop into those 2 seeds right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Bulls have UTSA on Thursday, Navy the following week, UAB, tough game on the road, and then they have Rice at home to finish it off. So, I mean, the next 3 weeks are really tough. Like, that UAB team beat Memphis, so like they're a quality team. They can beat anybody. So like, it's going to be a tough road the next 3 weeks, and they've got everything in front of them, and I hope they can do it. I hope that that Memphis game was just a blip on the radar, and instead of getting to a decent lead in games, they can just put the pedal to the metal and win these games. And that's what was frustrating about last week was they were up 2 touchdowns, and everything changed, and USF just couldn't put the offense together at the end. And it's if they can just sustain drives near the end of the games, they've got a chance to win out these games. I think they should be able to score a decent amount against UTSA. The defense has to come to play. I don't know if Schuler, if he's hurt. I didn't see anything about
same
what his timeout is going to be. So we'll see if he's coming back or not. But again, it's UTSA, Navy, UAB. You got to win these games. The Navy game is going to be the hardest. It's in Annapolis. It's going to be a tough game. Let's move on to Indiana, Maryland. What a butt whooping.
Yep.
And at first it was kind of Maryland was hanging with them, and then Indiana just put it to them. And Mendoza really didn't do much in this game. He had all right, but Kalen Black had a huge game. They had scoop and scores. They had all kinds of stuff going on. They had turnovers galore from Maryland, 5 total turnovers. They were +4 in the turnover margin for Indiana. 588 total yards, 367 rushing yards.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Hemby had a good game. Kobe Martin, who I haven't even heard of in their stable of running backs. I've not heard this guy's name, and he had 80 yards. Both Mendoza brothers had decent rushing games too, and it's just like they were dominant. Like Maryland could not stop them on offense, and Maryland is like, I don't know, they're very similar to UCLA. They're like a same kind of level team. Like they're plucky, they've got some offensive ability, but again, this Indiana team is like a Terminator at this point. They are just like dead set on destroying every team that they play, and it's not even close. Like they've only had like 2 close games all year, and outside of that, they've basically torched everyone else. Outside of Oregon was a 10-point game, Iowa was a 5-point game. They smoked Illinois, they smoked UCLA, they smoked Maryland, they smoked Indiana State, they smoked Kennesaw State, and really Old Dominion was about the only one that was somewhat close. But that was the first game of the year, so who knows what was going on there. Outside of that, they've just looked dominant. They look better than anyone else in the country. They just are. Like, I would not be surprised if, one, they're going to be a bye, because even if they lose in the Big Ten championship game, I think they'll still get a first-round bye just because of their, like, performance in the regular season. And, like, the rest of the season for them is Penn State, who's wounded badly, Wisconsin, who's terrible, and Purdue, who's terrible. They should smoke these next 3 teams by like 50 points each of these games. So Indiana just now really has that game against Ohio State. But again, like I said, even if they lose, I feel like they're going to a first round bye. So, but I don't even know how it works. Is it still top 4 conference, or is it?
No, it's top 4 teams and then conference champions fill the rest out.
Okay, so it's like top 4 teams get the first round bye, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like that's what I'm saying. Like I feel like Indiana's going to get one regardless if they lose or not. But I feel like they should probably beat Ohio State. It's going to be a good game regardless.
Yeah.
Both those teams are pretty evenly matched. But your thoughts on this one, then we'll move on.
I mean, there's not much to say that, you didn't say. I mean, Indiana, even without like an elite passing game, almost ran 400 yards rushing. So if they can't beat on the air, they're going to beat you on the ground. And the defense just, again, the defense does not get the flowers it should. Just an absolute dominating win. They got 2 picks off Washington. And, I think they only gave up like 40 yards rushing. And it was just no air to breathe for Maryland. And, Indiana, it made it that much easier because Maryland, it was like 3 and out. There were barely any first downs to give. And Indiana just had short field to play with the whole game. So great win for Indiana. They keep this, insane train going. And yeah, come Tuesday, I wouldn't be surprised if they, have a number 1 next to their logo.
Yeah, 37 yards rushing for Maryland. Okay, Moving on. I'm going to let you start first. See my headline here. You see this?
Yep. Okay. I'm going to make this.
I want to hear what you have to say. I really do. I'm excited what you have to say.
I've stayed on this path, and don't get me wrong, when it did happen twice, I was cursing the TV, I was upset, and I was saying rigged. But then once the emotions calm down, you can't score more than 24 points. Really? Again, you couldn't score more than 24 points. That was the takeaway for me. And with that, yes, okay, let's just get it out of the way. That was a catch. It was absolutely a catch. It, like, clear as day, no grass in between. Sherdevainen caught it. Like, you could see it hit here. I got the football. It hit his arm. That's a catch. But if Lagway doesn't underthrow that, there's not even a discussion.
Yeah,
and I get he was under pressure, but if he hits him in stride, that's the other thing I took from it. And I literally texted George. I said, for when we were talking about, going off about that should have been a catch, then it hit me with, God, if he just didn't underthrow it, there wouldn't even be a discussion. But yes, that headline isn't totally inaccurate, but I will say same thing I said about when, the Auburn-Georgia game. The refs didn't make Florida not score more than 24 points. If Florida executes those plays, because Lagway did have guys like Jackson, Sturtevant, Wilson open on a lot of these big plays, and he just couldn't connect. And then that, third down and short, fourth and short play, they needed 2 yards, and there was nothing the refs got in the way of. Georgia just flat out punched Florida back in the mouth, and that turnover on downs was huge because that first down kills more clock, gets them in better field goal position, and instead of even if Georgia scores, which I knew after that turnover on downs, Georgia was going to score, it's a whole different ball game after you kick the field goal and you have, starting from the 25 instead of the 30 to the 35-yard line. In all, Florida had every chance to potentially win this game, and whether it be the refs, whether it be themselves, whether it be Georgia, they couldn't get it done. And I think that was the difference, is that, like I said, Georgia is this cockroach that we cannot kill because of Tennessee, Ole Miss, all these teams, unless it's got an elephant logo, you're not beating Georgia. They find a way to win, rest be damned, they find a way to win. So in the end, it's a beyond frustrating and upsetting, loss for the Gators, rightfully so. The one thing was too, like I said, they had nothing to lose, and it showed. They let the playbook open, and they were really holding their own. I have no doubt if Napier was still head coach, it's not even like going into the third quarter, it would be close. Florida wouldn't have the lead at any point in this game, but they played like a team with nothing to lose, and they almost pulled it off. And at least there's hope that maybe they can sneak a win out of this with when they play Kentucky or Florida State or something like that. But again, I mean, what are you going to say? It's just a very disappointing loss. There's nothing more I could say after
that. Yeah, I don't want to blame it on the refs, but like you said, it was clearly a catch.
It was a catch. I'm not denying that. And it was clearly a catch.
It was clearly a catch. The overwhelming consensus outside of Georgia fans on Twitter is that it was a catch. There are very few people saying it wasn't a catch that were neutral. Anyone that was neutral, essentially said it was a catch. So it was overwhelmingly a catch. It's pretty undeniable at this point. So there's that. But I would like to point out the fact that Georgia was gifted 3 points at the end of the half.
Yeah.
Where if they don't get that field goal, it is a 6-point game going to that possession where Florida had to decide to go for it on fourth or kick a field goal. And if they're up 6 at that point with a chance to go up 2 scores, to go up 9 points, they kick that field goal instead of going for it on fourth. And Georgia's down 2 scores with, 7 minutes left?
Yeah.
I do not think Georgia wins that game if they are down 9 points with 7 minutes left. And you know what? You can call me whatever, but I'm sorry, but that was clearly a fumble. And it was called so on the field. There was not enough evidence to overturn that. It is ridiculous that was even a thought. I could see them, going to review it. That's fine. But the fact that they actually overturned it, that there was enough convincing evidence. There was not enough convincing evidence. They should have said call on the field stands. And that should have been what it was. And instead they get 3 free points that changed the whole trajectory of the game and changed the outcome in the fourth quarter. Now, the catch, whatever, the Florida still would have to score a touchdown there anyway. So it's not guaranteed. But it was guaranteed that literally a play after that fumble is taken away, that they result in a field goal. I mean, worst case scenario, they should have called that intentional grounding, if anything, because there was no one around, and that should have been a loss of down and a loss of 7 or 8 yards. No, they said incomplete, and that's something that needs to be changed with how things are reffed. with like how they implement intentional grounding. Either way, that was clearly a fumble. It's a shame that that was called the way it was. The rest of the game, I felt Florida played pretty loose. I felt like Trey Wilson had an amazing game. I think it was honestly one of his best games his entire career. He had that great touchdown. He was open. He was running good routes. Florida was like scheming him up. Dallas Wilson gets hurt and he's out for the year now. And then, Sturdivant played well enough in that game. Jaden Ball had a great game. I felt like the defense played tremendously. They had stops at a lot of times. They kept them in the game. It was tough to see them give up that last touchdown to Georgia. And then again, Georgia was getting a lot of plays, a lot of things. They weren't getting called for holding on certain things. You could clearly see holdings being done. Georgia, Stockton was all right. I think that, interception was a tip ball, so it wasn't necessarily his fault, but good play on Devin Moore to get that. I felt like he didn't overwhelm Florida a ton. And I think, again, if Florida's up 9 points in this game, they likely win. And it's just a shame because now Georgia's won 8 of 9. Literally, since I have left Florida and moved here, Georgia's won every game except for one. And it's just frustrating to watch this team struggle to win these games and struggle to, have to play the refs in these games when it's like, unless they're blowing them out like they did in 2020, Florida has to play the refs every one of these games. And it's like you had the play with Cager 6 years ago where it's like clearly on the ground, but they called that a completion somehow.
Yeah.
And then, you get all kinds of stuff with these, with Georgia getting calls nowadays. Like it's been the last couple of years. And yeah, they're one of the better teams, so they're going to get the benefit of the doubt, whatever. But at the same time, it's frustrating because it's like, Florida felt like the better team in this game. Like there was stretches in the second half where Florida just dominated. Like it was like that first drive for Georgia, and that was it. Florida was like the next 3 drives were touchdown, field goal, and then turnover on downs inside the 20. So like they were moving the ball quite well second half and looked like the better team up until that point when the turnover on downs happened. And again, if that field goal had been taken away from Georgia like it should have been because it should have been a fumble, then Florida should have been up 6 points at that point with a field goal to make it 9, and that would be it. So I'm just going to stand on that. Not many people are talking about that. They should, but it is the reality. Okay, moving on to Texas Tech, Kansas State. This Texas Tech team, man, this is a team that nobody talks about. Literally, no one talks about this team. I don't get it. I don't get why nobody doesn't talk about them. They do a lot of good things on all phases of football. Like they are probably outside of Indiana and like Ohio State, probably the most complete teams. Like I think Texas Tech can play with anybody. They've been dealing with injuries to Baron Morton the last couple of weeks. So they had that loss against Arizona State. But, man, I tell you what, man, this is a team that looks poised to go on a run in the playoffs. And they have, some easy ones at the end. But next week, ooh, boy, we got number 8 BYU going up against number 9 Texas Tech. Yeah. Look out for this one. This is a screamer of a game. And of course, Fox and their stupid big noon garbage. It's at noon. Like, come on, man. This game's got to be at prime time. This game's got to be 7, 8 o'clock at night, just freezing cold in Salt Lake City or Provo. No, it's in Lubbock. Sorry. But anyways, this would be a perfect game for a night game. But either way, it's going to be fun. The environment's going to be crazy. But going back to Kansas State, Kansas State was with them for a little bit. Avery was making some plays, but then he kind of fell apart. You know, he had some turnovers there and 2 interceptions. I think he had a fumble loss near the end of the fourth quarter too. So they had 5 total turnovers. So it was a negative, a +3 for Texas Tech turnover margin. Again, this is a steamroller of a team. They run the ball really well. They put up huge explosive plays in the passing game, and they just dominate teams. You know, they were 9 of 17 on conversions. They held Kansas State to 7 of 15 on conversions. I just think, man, this is an underrated team that nobody talks about, which I don't get. I don't see any videos on national media talking about them. They're the most silent front run, a potential playoff team I've ever seen. Last couple of years, if anyone team is in the playoff hunt, they talk about it. But this team, no one is talking about it. I don't get it. I don't know if it's just they haven't played a lot of marquee teams, but I know next week is going to be one of those, so we'll see. But your thoughts, Ian?
This was a huge bounce back game for Tech because obviously after the upset to Arizona State, then they beat out they shut out Oklahoma State. But this was a real test because you're at Manhattan and now you got to play K-State, which was kind of on the rise.
Yeah,
and then they just shut the obviously it was close, but then they pulled away. The rushing attack was fantastic. Morton had a good game. I think it was 250 yards. But, almost 200 yards itself in rushing. Caleb Douglas had, I think, 2 touchdowns, former Gator, transferred to Tech 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and the defense had a fantastic game. Anytime Tech scored, they made sure Kansas State could not respond. And that was vital because Tech just kept adding on and getting further and further away from K-State. And for K-State, I mean, it was like the Avery Johnson show, and I know they kind of built it around him, especially around the run. But without guys, I think it was Brown and Jackson couldn't really get much, so it became very predictable in the RPO game. But great win for Tech. Obviously, biggest game of the year. Now they play BYU, which could very well decide who's going to the Big 12 championship.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah, so great win for Tech, and they just keep on rolling, and now they go back to Lubbock for another huge game against the Cougars.
Nice. Okay, let's move on to South Carolina Ole Miss, the Lane Kiffin Bowl, and I want to hear your thoughts first on this game.
Yeah, South Carolina, I mean, give them credit. They definitely have not been going down and laying down dying. So they were, they had, first quarter they scored and they were up 7, and then kind of hanging in there going in the second quarter and into halftime. I think it was 14-7 or something like that. Getting into the fourth quarter, but when it came down to it, Ole Miss, kind of like Georgia, is finding a ways to win these games. Not pretty, but Ole Miss got the job done. Chambliss had he had the pick, but I think he had almost 160 yards passing, and then Lacey finally had a breakout game again, over 100 yards rushing, almost 200 yards rushing actually. Yeah. He had a touchdown. It was, very good game. And I think that was the difference too, is that Ole Miss finally had the rushing game to complement the passing game, while South Carolina bottled up Lenore Sellers and made sure the rushing attack wasn't as effective, and they made it a one-dimensional offense for South Carolina. So Ole Miss pulled away. Again, they're keeping it closer because they are better than South Carolina, but they could not put them away until late. But they had the rushing attack, which is huge for the Rebels, and that was able to win the game for them.
Yeah, I mean, what I noticed a lot in the highlight package of it was a lot of field goals by Ole Miss. That really kept South Carolina in the game. They weren't able to finish off drives with touchdowns. So that's something that Lane Kiffin is going to have to work on, getting more TDs out of those red zone opportunities. But, Ole Miss, again, they just looked very good on offense between the 20s. They're moving the ball quite well. And, someone's asking this guy, Mark Henry, any thoughts on Ole Miss defensive line improving, especially since Arkansas? I mean, it didn't look as good against Georgia, but yes, this game was better. I also feel like Sellers in that South Carolina offense was very limited. You know, throughout this year, it's been, I don't know, they just haven't looked the same as they were last year. You know, they have Harper, a speedster for South Carolina, but besides that, not a ton of like output from guys. You know, Faison for South Carolina, limited. But yeah, I would say Ole Miss looked better in this game. I think their test coming up for the rest of the year for Ole Miss is probably, let's see, they've got Florida. That'll be a tough game. And then they've got Mississippi State. I guess Florida is really the only one that they have to worry about. Yeah, I mean, honestly, at this point, you should probably just pencil in Ole Miss to be a playoff team because, you know, they have the loss to Georgia.
Yeah.
And that's it, right? So, like, I don't, like, at this point, like, even if they don't get to the SEC championship game, I feel like they're probably going to get into the playoffs. So, which would be a huge step in the right direction for them. Again, I mean, the chatter, Mr. Mark Henry, the problem is that Florida is going to be coming after Lane Kiffin very hard, and that's what seems to be a thing. Like, I don't know if Lane is going to stay. I don't know. I honestly, at this point, he puts out a lot of smoke screens. He's an internet troll. He loves to like play both sides of things. So you honestly don't know where he's going to end up. But if he has continued success at Ole Miss and he can take it to levels that they never have seen before, it lends itself that he could stay. I don't know, though. I don't know, because if he loses like a first-round game with Ole Miss and they're out of the playoffs and, you know, he looks at it and he's like, hey, maybe I should take this Florida job because they have more opportunities for recruiting. I don't know. Do you have any more thoughts on this? I'm gonna move on.
No, just like I said, the rushing attack is really what won the game for the Rebels.
Yeah, Lacey looks great. I mean, he's a really solid running back. I like him a ton. I think he's definitely, you know, an integral part to that Ole Miss offense. Okay, so next game we've got George. Oh, let's see. Well, we've got another response. He says, I think it would be hard to see him leaving a top 10 team that's basically giving him any resource he wants, especially after him in Tennessee. Okay, I mean, I'm just saying, like, as far as, like, if he feels that Ole Miss is limited, that's why he would leave. That's the only reason I would say that. But if he's able to win out games, like, if he gets to, like, the semifinals or maybe even gets to the championship game, maybe he feels differently. And maybe he's like, oh, I can win here. But it just depends. Like, it depends on how he does in the playoff, really. Like, that, I think that is – and they could lose another game. They could lose to Florida and get knocked out entirely. So that could be moot as well. So let's move on. Thank you for the questions, Mark. We appreciate it. Next one we've got is Georgia Tech, NC State. Man, I am so mad that Georgia Tech lost this game, but
Yeah.
Bailey for NC State, if you don't know, he looked great against Virginia, beat them, the only team that's beaten them, and he looked great in this game. The guy, like, I don't know, they look bad against some terrible teams, but then, you know, when it's come to these top-tier teams in the ACC, they've, you know, put up a ton of points. You know, Bailey is just – it's crazy because the guy's like 6'6". He's like super fast. They play Miami next week, Florida State after that. I think they should beat Florida State. Miami, I don't know, maybe. Depends on how that D-line pressures Bailey. But I think NC State's got a shot there. And then, because Bailey had 340 yards, 2 TDs. Jaden Scott for NC State had a ton of yards. He had 196, a touchdown. Yeah, Bailey had 3 total TDs. And, like, it's not like Georgia Tech didn't play well. They played decently on offense. Haynes King had 480 yards passing. Like, that is amazing. I've never seen Haynes King put up that much passing yards. He had another 103 on the ground. He had 4 total TDs. He had 511 yards of offense. That is insane. Like Haynes King, a lot of people haven't been talking about him for Heisman, but needs to be up there. Like even with the one loss, like I don't know, man. He puts up numbers. Like I would think that he has to be up there as well. But NC State, just the better team all around. You know, it was like a good game for the most part. It wasn't like NC State like dominated and was like up 20 or whatever. It was like a close game there for a little bit, and then NC State kind of went up like 3 scores or like 16 points late, and then Georgia Tech had a late touchdown, and they actually had the ball late too. They would have made it like even a 1-score game at that. But it sucks for Georgia Tech to lose this game because they had a lot going for them, and they still have a potential playoff spot. They just need to keep winning out. You know, this loss is not a game ender, but their season gets a lot harder because after Boston College, they have Pitt at home and then Georgia in Atlanta in a tough game. And like, man, that's a tough road, Pitt and Georgia at the end. So at least if they win this Boston College game, I think they have a real shot of getting to the ACC championship game. But the problem is Pitt only has 1 loss in ACC play. So a loss to them would be basically send Pitt on. Well, Pitt has Miami as well, so we'll see. But Pitt has a tough schedule. I just noticed this. Pitt plays Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, Miami in 3 weeks in a row. That is some showcase games. We're going to really like – they'll be in our list. Like we haven't had them in the rundown in a while, but like they're definitely going to be in the rundown the next couple of weeks. So we'll get a real good gauge of how good Pitt is. Ian, your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, this was definitely more surprising than the fact that Georgia Tech just couldn't get the job done because Kane, man, he put the team on his back. I think it was like 500 all-purpose yards, which is insane. 400 passing and then 100 rushing, 4 total touchdowns. But again, when you have something like that and the defense could not stop both Bailey's passing and it was the rushing attack of like, you know, Will Wilson, I think Jaden Scott had almost 200 yards rushing as well. That duo is what really killed it for Tech is they didn't know whether it was play action, pass, or, you know, they were just running onto the outside. That's what really killed the Yellow Jackets here is that NC State was able to take advantage of keeping them on their heels. And Georgia Tech, as good as Kane was, it's a lot easier to stop it when you know they're only using 1 guy instead of 2, which is what NC State was doing. So NC State, they, you know, jumped on Tech. Tech, obviously, you know, they were swinging the whole game, and they at least came for the fight. But in the end, NC State pulled away late. They had the bigger plays when it mattered, and the Wolfpack get a huge upset.
Okay, moving on. Last couple we got here. We'll make them fast. Oklahoma, Tennessee. Oklahoma hangs on 33-27. Kind of a back-and-forth game the entire way. Mateer looked okay, but had another interception. Aguilar struggled, like a couple of really bad interceptions, but he still put up like 393 yards and 3 TDs. So he didn't have a terrible game. It was just those 2 passes were bad. Mateer had a terrible interception near the end of the game where they were up I think they were up 6 and they were driving to put them up 2 scores. And he it was first down and he just throws it and kind of sidearms it and it just pops up and got intercepted and really kind of changed the complexity of the game there. Kept Tennessee in it. There was a scoop and score for Oklahoma at one point. There was a lot of good returns by Oklahoma in here to really get short fields after turnovers. And that was the difference of the game. The turnovers were really the telling part of this game because Oklahoma was not amazing in this game offensively, but they did run the ball well. And both Robinson and Mateer had solid ground games. And Robinson had 115 and a TD. Your thoughts, Ian?
Yeah, and one thing I'm going to say as a uniform guy, this is why Tennessee, you don't wear black anymore. It doesn't look good. It's not your colors, and it's just bad luck. That being said, Oklahoma, for Venable, this is his biggest win so far as coach of Oklahoma. Until he beats, Texas again, this is the biggest win because you went into Tennessee, and obviously Tennessee has looked really good against teams like Georgia, Bama, and all that, where their only 2 losses. But they get a huge win, and they keep, their hopes alive to, salvage the year. But the thing is, too, is that you want to talk about Aguilar not having a bad game. The rushing for Tennessee was non-existent. Yeah. So, again, it makes it predictable. And Aguilar did the best he could, almost 400 yards passing, but those 2 interceptions were because it was cover 2, cover 3 defense. And Venable, a defensive coach, knew. They was like, look, they're not running the ball. They know we know they're not going to beat us on the ground. Just have the secondary play these, matchups, and we'll, take advantage of it. And still, Aguilar did the best he could, but Oklahoma, without that pick that, Mateer has, it's a completely different ball game. That, they control the, ground game, they control the time of possession, and they just pulled away in the end.
Yeah, and Oklahoma's schedule, if you don't know, folks, Alabama and Tuscaloosa next week, Missouri in an old school Big 12 and Southwest, right? Is that where they're in together, right? Or
no, they were in the Big 8.
Big 8 together. So a rematch of that, and then LSU, which who knows? We haven't even seen LSU since the firing, so you don't know what kind of team is going to show up for that. So a real target on their back the next couple of weeks. If they're going to really do something, if they got a shot at playoffs, whatever. They got to win out. It's going to be tough. That Alabama game in 2 weeks, I'm excited for that one. That should be a huge game. That should be a lot of fun. Okay, moving on. Last 2 we got. We'll spend more time on this one than the last one because the last one's a blowout. But USC, man, dude, they got so lucky in this one because Raiola gets hurt and he broke his leg. And so the guy that came in for them for Nebraska was, let me see what his name is so I get it right. He's from this area. He's from L.A. TJ Latif. And he just couldn't do anything. Like, he had 5 completions for 7 yards. That's like 1.5 yard per completion. It was terrible. He's just not as good as Raiola. And Emmett Johnson had a great game for them. But once Raiola went out, it was like the air went out of the whole stadium, and they didn't have enough. USC was making enough plays. Maiava had his worst game by far, 9 of 23, 135 yards, a bad interception. But King Miller, the walk-on extraordinaire, comes in and does his thing again, 129 yards on the ground and a TD. And I will say Maiava did good on the ground. He had 62 yards for a TD. But outside of that, there wasn't a ton in the passing game. Nobody was getting open. Nebraska played really good defense. But the thing is, they won. And they're 6-2. USC now has Northwestern next week on Friday, which they should easily win that game. Iowa at home should be a tough one, but I think USC will be favored in that game. And then it's really the last 2 weeks, Oregon in Eugene, and then UCLA at the Coliseum. So it's a tough road. Like, USC has to win out if they want any shot at the playoff. And I think their defense is good enough to make them a playoff team. They cannot be that limited on offense again. They've got to be more dynamic. It's very rare that you see a Lincoln Riley team with a quarterback having that bad of a game. Like, you don't see that often. So it struggled there. They've got to get better. The run game was there, and I think they'll have that again going the next couple of weeks. But again, winning is important. They're 6-2. They have these 4 games to run out here the rest of the year. The toughest game is going to be that Oregon game, which we don't know what this Oregon team is going to be like the next couple of weeks because they've been off and we really haven't heard much from them. So are they going to be, ready to play? I think Oregon plays what is it? They play Rutgers. No, they played them last week. They play Iowa, Minnesota, Washington at the end too. So they've got Oregon's got a tough road too. So it'll be interesting these next couple of weeks with these two, USC and Oregon, really with a collision course. But again, USC gets the win. What are your thoughts, Ian, on this one?
I mean, definition of better to be lucky than good, especially when Raiola went down. Then it became very tough. Both teams had to rely on the run game, and USC just flat out had the better run game at that point, especially with Kane Miller. I think they had over 200 yards rushing, and Miller had that touchdown. I think Mayava ran one in too. But Mayava did not have a good game in general throwing the ball, and it became they are lucky that the run game was as good as it was, because if it was not, Nebraska would have won this game. And that's the thing. I'm like, God bless Nebraska, because every time they're like about to have a breakout win, something happens, and it's Raiola going down, and then not only Raiola goes down, but then the running game just cannot go toe for toe with USC. I agree with you. USC, if they keep playing like this, they got away with it against Nebraska, but it's not going to work when you play Oregon at the end of the year. And I mean, dude, we've seen if you have a bad game against UCLA now, how they can bite you too. So it's definitely something they're going to have to adjust on quickly.
Okay, last one. We'll do this one really quick because there's a blowout. Cincinnati, Utah. I didn't think this Cincinnati team was all that great, but this Utah running offense, they will run the ball on everyone. And what they do is they set up their RPO stuff, and their Dampier is not the strongest armed quarterback, and he had a bad interception in this game. But the way they set up their offense is they're going to run the ball down your throat, and then they set up the pass to get an explosive off you. And it usually works because you're getting lulled to sleep with the run game, and you're trying to stop that. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Dampier does a fake handoff, pulls back, and then is ready to throw, and then the guy's wide open down the field. So he had a lot of huge, big plays like that. They had a huge punt return for a touchdown. This game, it's just, Utah is clearly one of the better teams in the Big 12. It's no doubt in my mind. They barely lost to BYU, and, they just couldn't really get the ground game going against Texas Tech. But again, Texas Tech is a really good defense, so I think plays into that. Outside of those two teams, Utah is the clear second tier of Big 12 teams right now. And so they have to finish out the year. They have Baylor, Kansas State in a tough one, and Kansas. I mean, Utah is going to be right there, but the problem is they lost to both BYU and Texas Tech already. So their head-to-head with both of them is bad. With two losses, they would need them to lose at least Texas Tech to lose 2 more and BYU to lose 3 more, which is not going to happen. So, I feel like, Utah is going to be right there. It's them in Houston, and they're clearly better than Cincinnati.
Yeah.
They dominated them here. And so, I think Utah's in that second tier, and then you've got right now top tier, and we've got that game coming, BYU, Texas Tech. Should be fun. But you have any thoughts before we go?
No, I'll just make it quick and say, one, I think the key factor in this one was Utah's secondary. Because Sorsby, he did have over 200 yards passing, but it was 11 for 33 with a lot of incompletions.
Yeah.
And the yardage-wise, they were pretty even. Both had over 400 yards, but if those passes hit more than, the 11 completions, I get Utah, ran away with it. But if those hit, it's more of a shootout than it is a blowout. But it also was, too, is that Utah just dominated time of possession. It was over 40 minutes of time of possession.
Yeah.
That's why Cincinnati didn't score, because they didn't have the ball. They barely had it for those, obviously the secondary stepped up because there was obvious passing downs. But great win for Utah. And, they definitely lived up to the hype and, stay in the race for the Big 12.
Okay, that is the show. You can reach us at haterradio.com for all of our articles. I got my Billy Napier end of the era article up there. Actually, it did quite well. I had like close to 1,700 people looked at it. So if you get a chance, check it out. I'm not going to advertise anymore on Facebook because I had your photo up there, and your photo was when you were on ESPN, and so Facebook, like,
Oh,
through
they did. All right.
AI, found out that it was an ESPN photo, so they were like, you can't use that in advertising. So I'm not able to use that, and the problem is the metadata for that article is encrypted with that photo. So when you advertise, it comes up. Even if you post and change a new photo, it still comes up with the old photo.
Got ya.
So it's kind of too much work to even bother advertising again. I just take the win on how many we got. Like I said, we got 1,700 people that read the article, so that's pretty good. But check us there for all the socials. It's Hater Radio. Type it in; it'll come right up. Ian, what are your socials before we go?
Yeah, at Twitter, it's at G5Gibson, and at YouTube and Instagram, it's at G_Gator_G.
All right, that's the show, y'all. Catch us on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Same time next Sunday as well. Have a good weekend. And now it's, daylight savings time, so short hours. So, oh well, we'll get through this. We'll get to the spring. All right, take care, y'all.